Hey guys, welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Emery Cuzzy, sitting here with Cameron Selby, and today we're going to talk about some of the biggest losers of the 2024 draft. That doesn't just mean team, that means just individual losers even. Sometimes the team, sometimes the group of players at a position. But yeah, so we're going to run through some of those.
Yeah, it's mainly about the situation in which it fell. Some people weren't traded. Some guys were added that probably hinder the impact that they will have.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some teams didn't get the player because just draft didn't fall the way they wanted. There's
Right.
always a few of those, so we wanted to kind of run through some of those. Continue recapping the draft that happened this past week.
Yeah, so to start off, we are gonna start off with a full draft. Talking about the Tennessee Titans here on the board. There's some notable picks. It's basically everybody, but um, they took our fourth tackle off the board to start it, and so at 7 they're the second tackle off the board for the draft, and they go the fourth tackle off the board on our big board. That was already a concern, but then they did not address the biggest need that their team had until the 5th round, and that's DB. And they're going to have to figure out how to stop some people throwing the ball, and they have a really good division throwing the ball, so we're going to have to see if they can do that. But
yeah, I mean, in terms of the top 10 of all the overall picks, we can debate on which ones we loved and hate, which you can check out that video. There's a couple of those as well. Um, they were probably the biggest loser because they were the one true team that their plan A got taken.
right.
Because as much as you could say the Chargers maybe wanted to move back, get extra picks, and still take the tackle, they still got the best tackle in the draft. And again, we were saying if they stayed put, that's who we would have had going there. Arizona had the best receiver, and everything was trickled down to where Tennessee was just like, please, Joe Alt, fall to us.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't. And so then they had to kind of reach on a tackle. And, you know, JC is somebody, again, we've been much lower on compared to the consensus. Um, I just don't know stylistically if it works for
Right.
Tennessee now. They're no longer going to the, ground and pound mauler game. And like you said, he plays kind of high. Um, and I just don't know situationally, especially when that was the only tackle they took. They didn't really address offensive line much in the offseason.
Right.
So there's still a void at left tackle. And if you're going to have JC Latham go over there,
Right.
it's something he's not
He'll
too
be
familiar with.
moving from right tackle over to left tackle. And it's weird because, we can make speculations and all we want, but Olu's still on the board. Olu plays left tackle. Olu is really good at pass blocking. And Tennessee is set up to pass the ball. So, stylistically it didn't make sense like you said, but they have no power running back. They now have 2 scat backs. They have 3 receivers. A receiving tight end, not even a blocking tight end, and they add a guy that's going to have to move from right tackle to left tackle that is probably better fit in a run style scheme. So,
Yeah, and then Tavondre Sweat, obviously, we, in terms of our big board, were much higher compared to everybody else. He was in the 90s, 70s, 80s for a lot of people, and he cracked our top 50. So it wasn't necessarily a surprise that he went 38, but it's also, I don't know if that's of all the players that were on the board, somebody that can make an instant impact next year to improve their defense, because it was one of the bottom, like you said. There was plenty of corners on the board,
yeah,
and they passed on it to go with another D tackle, which I know you say that, Jeffrey Simmons is obviously their best remaining defensive player.
right.
I figured, you have so many holes elsewhere. Let's not do what Washington is and just let's solidify the defensive line and then let our defensive backs just.
Right. Well, so for me, I think it's a good fit pick. I don't know that and so we had talked about putting him on possibly the hate love list or on the hate list because Cooper DeJean's on the board, Kool-Aid McKinstry's on the board. All these good corners are on the board, and they go with the D lineman. The fit makes sense to me. It feels very UT, Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy. You have Jeffrey Simmons, who's more of a better athlete, but Tavondre Sweat, you're going to have to block with two guys at every play. So I understood that part of it. It's just there were so many better players for like opportunity cost wise for them. Like we said, we thought that Tavondre was going to go in this range. We expected Tennessee at this point to, just like we probably expected 10 teams to take Cooper DeJean or Kool-Aid. So
right, yeah, and just holistically with the draft class that they had, it's unfortunately for them just the way the board fell that those rookies probably have the least amount of impact to improve the roster compared to any other team in the top 10 other than maybe Atlanta, but that was a choice
Right.
because, they went quarterback with their first pick. So obviously they're building that as a stash pick. So that was intentional. Tennessee tried to improve their roster and kind of feels like it stayed stagnant.
Right. And one thing I will say is I actually don't hate the players that they got. Like we talked about Devondre Sweat. We actually like him a lot. Cedric Gray, he's a top 5 linebacker on our board. He was not the 5th linebacker taken. Jarvis Brownlee, he was one of the standouts at the Senior Bowl. But it's just they needed corner. They needed an interior offensive line after they went offensive tackle, and they didn't do those things. And that's why it's such a bad draft.
Right.
More so than the fact that the players are bad players. They just didn't improve in the right places to me. So. But yeah, so jumping over, we're gonna look at the number 8 pick, the Atlanta Falcons going with Michael Penix Jr. It muddies the water to say the least in what they're gonna do. It hurts Kirk Cousins because now he probably feels like they're trying to get rid of him in 2 years because that's how his contract is set up. And then you have a 24-and-a-half-year-old when he starts the season. He's not going to play for 2 years. If he does play, they're just eating the cap on they don't get to.
You're not maximizing the rookie contract, which is so important nowadays.
Yeah, they're gonna hurt because of money, or they're gonna hurt because of the fact that they didn't improve anywhere else either is the thing too. Like they didn't get a defensive player that can help them right now. So
yeah, and this isn't to say that we're low on the Falcons this year. They're minus money to win the division, one of 3 teams, I believe. And it's just Kansas City and San Fran and Atlanta to be a division winner. We are very likely to stay that route. However, it, like you said, perfectly muddies the water. It's not a great situation to have. It makes sense if you had a 21-year-old quarterback that you drafted early to, mold over. Makes sense. But he's 24 to start the year. And so after that 2-year stretch, he's already 26. And most of these quarterbacks that are making deep playoff runs are younger than 25 already. So you can't just look at Jordan Love having a great 2-month stretch and just assume, oh yeah, a quarterback can sit multiple years in this day's game and just we're going to be fine.
Right.
Because Jordan Love, he was really Desmond Ridder for the first 10 weeks of the season last year. He had a fantastic into the year. And it's great, and Green Bay is going to pay him a lot of money because of that. But let's not just jump to, oh yeah, and there's still more to come.
Right.
It could very well be that was just the best football he's ever played. We've seen Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan, guys like that who are top 10 quarterbacks that are known to not take your team over the top and just be game managers that have great stretches, but they have been known to be overpaid. And Kirk Cousins will always have the stigma because he hit free agency at the right time. So you look at his career earnings and then one playoff win, and you're just like, bust of a quarterback, underwhelming. You look at the primetime record, and it's just like, well, he just set the record for most fourth quarter comebacks last year. They were 13-0 in one possession games, referring to 2022 when he was last healthy. And last year, he was 1-4 start and then was playing his best football when he went down. So, it's talking about the money and the situation, and that's why he has a negative rap with him. And then with Penix, one, I guess you could say stylistically it's a similar play.
Yeah.
But still, I don't think that it's kind of similar to Washington drafting RG3 and then Kirk Cousins 2 rounds later and just like, oh, that's our quarterback situation. It's like polar opposite. So when RG3, if and when he goes down, there's going to be some growing pains for Kirk because it's not the same offense at all.
Yeah.
So
in this situation, I think they're, like you said, they're similar. And they're both going to stand in the backfield and throw the ball. Like that's that's the similar part of them, I guess. But when you really look and you get into it, it's like we didn't have Penix at our number 4 quarterback either. We had him at our 6 quarterback. And they're getting calls from teams. They're having opportunities to move back and add picks, having opportunities to,
best defensive player on the board.
Exactly. There's so many other options, and that's why nobody saw this coming. None of the draft in our recap, no one saw that Penix was going to be the guy at 8. Which I think makes the most sense too. Like we shouldn't expect that. We should expect them to try to improve their roster after they pay a guy in Kirk Cousins. They have a really good offensive lines, all first rounders. Got a first round receiver, running back, tight end. You should maximize your defense because right now that's what's really lacking and hurting. And they're going to continue being a bottom sack team because of it.
And then also, in addition to that, we argued in our least favorite picks video. I brought up I actually disliked the second round pick more just because of who they passed up on. So Rukaroro gets selected before Johnny Newton. Johnny Newton was the best defensive lineman in football in college over the last 2 seasons. Not just this, had a breakout year and he's raw and he's young and he was in the Big Ten.
Not in the ACC.
And then in the worst division, or conference rather, not even making first or second team, and he's older. Yeah, that was more puzzling because I don't even see the vision with that one. Versus with, I understand. Oh, Kirk, we don't know if he'll be the same. You want insurance. I get maybe that's not what we would have done, but I get the reason behind it.
Right.
But with defensive tackle, we're taking defensive tackle, but we're not going to take the best one. We're going to take the guy that wasn't even on our honorable mention list.
Yeah, he's probably a top 50. I mean, he's probably like 10, 11, 12 defensive tackle if I had to like rank, fully through the 5th round. But he's definitely not number 38 in the draft. That also being said, they could have gone Cooper DeJean. They could have gone Kool-Aid. And we're going to talk about that a lot here because they fell and 3 teams got 2 of the top 6 cornerbacks on our board. There are teams.
They weren't one of them.
Yeah,
and they needed a corner.
They need a corner. They had an opportunity and they just, botched it. So, yeah. And then you go down the list. The other guys on this list, they did kind of do better 3rd through 7th round. But they had already botched it so much in the early part of this. So Braylon Trice, solid, but not going to get you, huge sack production. He's more of a run stopping edge that is, has a high motor and gets like late sacks. Brandon Dorless, he's an interesting tweener because he has good pass rush moves and he can play at the 3 technique, but he's only 285 pounds. So he's going to be situational at best at the beginning of this. And he might be better than Rukaroro at the end of everything we're going to be done talking about, And then JD Bertrand's one of the better linebackers at this point in the draft. But yeah, it's definitely a puzzling draft, and we'll just see what happens, I guess,
I guess the one, somewhat positive I could say is that they went 3 straight years of skill positions in the top 10. And so knowing like, hey, we're good on skill position, we're good on offensive linemen, we don't even want to touch those in the early rounds. You didn't, which is fine.
All defense.
But you still...
After a quarterback. So, yeah. Jumping over, the San Francisco 49ers at 31, they pick Ricky Pearsall. We had trade rumors all, basically all offseason, or all the way leading up to the draft. Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk were trade options, and nothing happened. And now they have 3 receivers, a tight end, and a running back that are all fighting for, I mean, I don't know how good Ricky Pearsall is going to be. So maybe I don't put him in there yet. But like they have a bunch of guys that can play football really well. And it's going to be an issue of who's getting the ball, how are they going to do it? And now Deebo is the tweener between running back and receiver. He's going to have the weirdest transition trying to figure out where he actually fits in this offense, I feel like.
Right. And with this selection of biggest losers. This isn't more so right now, but more a long term
Hmm.
because you didn't get the deal like you said, and right now I don't anticipate San Fran before the training camp starts making a trade.
Right.
Maybe if there's a holdout or something, they switch it up a little differently. But Debo, going into the year 28 years old, he plays a style that is kind of concerning because receivers, once you hit the 30 mark, real huge drop off. He's approaching that quickly, and he also, like you said, plays a running back style.
Hmm.
So you don't know. I mean, we saw in the Super Bowl how he was in and out of the lineup because of just nagging hammies and
Right.
you know non-contact stuff that you wonder. And then with the Ricky Pearsall selection, they're not stylistically the same player, but I at this point, if Ayuk and Samuel are both there, I think Samuel's more likely to be moved on from because Brandon Ayuk's 3 years younger.
Right.
He had essentially a little more chemistry with Purdy down the stretch
Hmm.
and was making the big plays. So, um, this is something that I just wonder if he goes into his quote unquote either contract or last year as a 49er and he has an underwhelming production, then
Hmm.
he kind of starts doing a jump to team and kind of fades out instead of, ages well at the position like a Keenan Allen or Mike
Right.
Evans or something of that nature.
Yeah. With this also, like you said, Ayuk is more of stylistically what Purdy likes. So is Pearsall. Like stylistically, those two guys are much a better fit for what Purdy wants to do. While Deebo is one of those guys that, is more of a quick get it out, run with the ball after the catch type of guy that we love watching. And
Hmm.
it's really hard, I think, to replace that kind of player. But if you don't fit in the offense and you're that player, you're not going to be productive. And that could also drive down his price later on in his, like after this season. Like we said, we expect him to be there, but you can't pay everybody. And
Hmm.
we're going to start seeing that this next
And
year.
then we've seen some of the contracts. Like we're still waiting on the Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and
Right.
they're in their own tier of they're going to get close to 40,
Yeah.
probably at
Hmm.
least 35. Even though the Amon Ra's and AJ Browns are getting the 30, and then the next tier is like 25.
Hmm.
Well, Debo's probably going to be expecting closer to 30, and I just don't know who can pay him, and then also get the bang for the buck
Right.
going forward. I just view him as a style, unless he switches it up, a player that's kind of going to age out with the bad contract, which I hate when that happens when you're a good player and you're just known for nobody wants you because you're too expensive.
Well, I love Deebo and I love his style. So I wish like we could find a way to get him to a team that already has a number one like style receiver, and then like it's not going to
Hmm.
happen. But say like T Higgins is going to get moved on from this next year. Well, if Debo goes to Cincinnati, I feel like that's a very good fit
Hmm.
because you have Jamar Chase. You don't have to be the number one. And then you have the stylistic of yards after the catch. You can catch the short balls. You can be the outlet, those types of things.
And
It's just hard to
and
find a team.
also, like we said, unless the trade is happening before, like there's a holdout, I just don't see them moving on
Hmm.
because in the last three trade deadlines, they've been a buyer at the trade deadline, not a seller.
Right.
So I don't see you fighting for the one seed in the NFC and then trading one of your Pro Bowlers just because, oh, we don't want to lose him for nothing.
Right.
Because if you win the Super Bowl, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Look at the Rams, how they just kind of essentially sold their soul to win one, and it was worth it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we see the Super Bowl, not the contract
Exactly.
issues.
So, and then another one we wanted to mention was basically the Raiders QB situation room, whatever you want to put it. So in free agency, they brought in Gardner Minshew. I wish that Indianapolis would have brought him back because I
Hmm.
thought he meshed so well, despite being different styles. His and Anthony Richardson's chemistry was phenomenal
Hmm.
as a 1-2 quarterback room. It just seemed very a healthy relationship. Goes to the Raiders, and you're expecting, everybody had Michael Penix going to the Raiders in some way, shape, or form, whether it be a trade up, staying at 13 and picking him. And obviously, when all six went before 13, it was like, Well, you're not getting one now. And it didn't make sense to invest in one in the early rounds at that point. But they didn't invest in one at all.
Right. Yeah.
And so now this is your QB room, Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. And it's a very weird situation of they've got a really solid roster that might just be left behind because they didn't figure that out
Yeah.
soon enough.
I feel like we overpaid a backup quarterback,
Mhm.
basically. And that's not a knock on Gardner Minshew. He just got good money for his talents as a backup. And so not getting someone to start maybe halfway through the season or something like that. We didn't even attempt, 4th round Spencer Rattler or 6th round Joe Milton or something like that. Because Joe Milton goes in the 7th round. I feel like we could have taken a stab at that upside even. We haven't really signed anybody in free agency from the draft, undrafted free agents. And it's like, what are we going to do? Because I don't know that. I think this team is still 8 wins, 9 wins if lucky, I guess.
It should be,
Right.
but there were also so many AFC teams that lost their quarterbacks, and that kind of helped propel Vegas up. So you just don't know if the marbles don't fall where they should. They could just kind of be left behind and be a very formidable 5-6 win team that can upset a Kansas City every now and
Right.
again. But just consistently, they're going to be losing those close games. I mean, it's fortunate that the Jimmy G PED situation voided his contract.
Right. Not
But
paying him.
don't even look at the money. Just Jimmy G with this roster, I would feel dark horse playoff team. And right now, I just kind of don't see it. And like, it's just kind of hard to place them right now. And it's primarily because of quarterback. It's the most important position. They had a really good draft. Really good draft.
Value
wise, got a lot of players that we liked. But at the end of the day, when you don't have the head of the snake, leading you forward. I mean, we saw years in Houston when they're going through Tom Savage and Brock Osweiler, they're number one in the league in defense, and they're a 6-7 win team, or 9-7 and early out.
Right.
And so when they're in a harder division than Houston was at the time, and the quarterback situation is the same, we'll just kind of see what happens. But look at the AFC North; every single team was winning record, and then you look at AFC West, at least 2 playoff contenders,
Right.
not including the Raiders, and then AFC South. Well, Jacksonville was just a Final Four 2 years ago, and then Houston is now the sexy team. Indy was right there at the end, and then the AFC East. There's 3 teams there, so there's just too many contenders, and when you have the significant gap at quarterback, it's hard to give a ton of outlook or upside to a playoff berth, which
Right.
I think is going to be frustrating taking a step back or stagnant after the really solid offseason that they had. So it's kind of tough.
Well, I think also, like you were saying about our division, is the Chargers are not going to be 5 wins. They're going to be much better. The Broncos are honestly better than people are giving them credit for.
Yeah, they're going to be predicted to have 4 or 5 wins, and they're going to be way more scrappy than that.
Yeah. So, and then the Chiefs are the number 1 team in football, no matter what book you look at, basically. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be a uphill battle. I think we could get to 8 wins. It's just, or 9 wins but I don't think 9 wins is playoffs still. Like, I think that's the other problem is because the depth in the conference is so good. 9 wins is probably not.
Yeah,
a playoff team.
There were multiple winning record teams that missed the playoffs last year,
including us, including the Raiders.
And that doesn't. Well, y'all were 8-9. It was close.
Oh yeah.
But that was with 6 teams losing their quarterbacks for significant stretches. So, like, Cincinnati didn't have a winning record. However, they lost Joe Burrow 7 weeks in, and he came in banged up. Justin Herbert, Deshaun Watson, and et cetera and so on. So we'll just kind of see what happens. We can break them down later on as we go through. But it was just they were a loser in terms of everybody had them going quarterback, and 6 went off the board early, and then not addressing it. It was just, and we're not faulting them for not addressing it later. It's more so just, damn, y'all missed out.
I would have felt better if we would have taken a late round quarterback.
Mhm.
Smoke.
So,
yeah, jumping over. This is a group that we didn't really have high hopes for originally. It's one of the lowest groups on out of all the positions in the draft. But for the running back group, they didn't necessarily fall to the best teams to help them, be good. These are the guys that we had ranked in our top 7 here, and I see maybe 2 guys, 3 guys that I'm like, oh, those are okay fits, not great fits, but just okay. They're going to be number 2s or whatnot. The only one that I thought was a good fit was Jonathan Brooks, but at the end of the day, he has an ACL tear. So,
yeah, from a fantasy perspective, it's going to be very frustrating to, have confidence in these guys. In the last 6-7 years, there's been at least 2 running backs every single year to finish as in either RB1 or RB2. But over 20 rookies. And I just don't see a path of anybody other than Jonathan Brooks as of this moment, just because you look at Trey Benson and, James Conner, if he goes down, because we see him miss a month at a time, very good waiver wire target and whatnot. But James Conner doesn't really share the backfield
right
in his touches. You go to the Rams, there's not many bell cow running backs. They were the ones that had one, and then they selected Blake Corum, who's a terrible compliment.
Yeah, not a good compliment.
Marshawn Lloyd is, I guess, a fine compliment, but again, Josh Jacobs one of the few guys getting consistently 20 to 25 touches every week. And then Bucky Irving, Rashad White is one of the best scat backs that we can see. Bucky Irving was
the same style.
Yeah. So it doesn't make sense. It's just like Chase Edmonds, who's their third string. Y'all have one type of back, and that's it. It's kind of frustrating. Braylon Allen, again, Breece Hall, he is going to have a monster workload this year.
Right.
He was one of the few that after a torn ACL came back and was still an RB1. He finished as RB2 overall last year because of his strong finish. So a year removed from that, you're expecting him to take a step back? No. And Braylon Allen was a raw running back that was very talented but young.
Very young. Yeah.
He's going to have to wait a while for any kind of significant role. And then Audric Estime, Denver has Javonte Williams, Samaje Perine still. Maybe if Javonte continues to struggle, because he also had a torn ACL and he came back and looked like it. But again, year removed, you're going to expect that he's going to just 50-50 the role with a guy that everybody was much lower on than us even. There's just not many bright spots.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, is like, I think Trey Benson is probably the best option if I had to look at this list, because I do think that James Conner has had serious issues in the past. But you're spot starting him. You're not starting him every week. Jonathan Brooks, I don't know. That's the other thing too with Jonathan Brooks. Like, he could, excuse me, he could come back and be, like Breece Hall. But then we also could get him looking like J.K. Dobbins. And so that's the everybody on this list has serious concerns, and we can't give you one guy that we're like, you should take a shot in the 10th round of your best ball drafts, 12th round of your best ball drafts on this guy. It's like,
and the frustrating part is just, and this isn't even a fan talking, but just situationally, Dallas was the clear cut team that needed one, and everybody had whoever your RB1 was off the board in the second round mock to Dallas. And obviously, Jerry Jones, whether it was smoke and mirrors, I don't know, but heavily, we want Jonathan Brooks. And then after draft weekend, the only running back, notably, that you came away with was returning Ezekiel Elliott. Loved the signing.
Yeah.
But as a compliment. And now you're stuck with a running back room of Zeke and Rico Dowdle when you could have had Zeke and any of these guys, and it would have felt better.
Add one in.
So
Marshawn Lloyd would have been a great pick. Like those.
Exactly. Yeah. So any of those guys would have had a much better situation going to somewhere like Dallas, which is void of an RB1 still. But yeah, the whole group as a whole just didn't land in spots that we loved. Some may work out,
right?
Because rookie running backs just typically find ways to get touches. But it's one of the worst classes we've seen in some time, and also none of them really went to fits that were just like, okay, that could change my mind.
Yeah, one guy that's not on this list is like Jalen Wright.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually think that's a good fit, but just not this year, because I think Raheem Mostert will be gone. And
Eventually.
That's what they're doing. They're replacing him and his speed, but you're going to wait to play. So, yeah, it's a frustrating group. We're not going to, try to give y'all like, I know in dynasty rankings, some of these guys are popping up, and I'm like, there's no one on this list that should be popping up except for like maybe Jonathan Brooks, just because he is the clearest path for workload, but he might not come back being the same player.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah. But yeah, jumping over, next guy, number 3 overall pick, Drake Maye. He goes to the New England Patriots. I think his situation is really difficult because of the fact that if he doesn't play and he sits a year, well, that's already annoying as a quarterback or a player that's going top 3. But then if he does play, he has no supporting cast. And I'm a big believer in confidence. Confidence is everything for quarterback and cornerback. Whenever you think about it, those are the 2 positions. And if he fails over and over and over again at the NFL level, going a 3-14, 4-13 team, it's going to hurt that confidence. And I don't know that if he can be the player that can just come out of that the next year and be okay,
Respectfully to Patriots fans who, you got 6 rings, you can show them off all you want. This is Sam Darnold going to the Jets in 2018. Very talented young quarterback,
right,
that just goes to the worst skill group. Terrible, or not terrible, but below average offensive line. There's just nothing to work with. And Sam Darnold was forced to start very early, and it just destroyed confidence. Like viral. I'm seeing ghosts because the Patriots are just taking it to him. Drake Maye, like you said, no supporting cast. They brought in Jacoby Brissett. I highly advise he doesn't see any action until very least late November.
Yeah.
But I just don't anticipate that happening. And if that does happen, you are on the worst roster in the AFC, and you're going to be a 4-13 type of team. Can you overcome that? And I just don't know in this day and age, because it used to be you give somebody 3 years, then you figure it out. But nowadays we've seen, if you drafted a quarterback early, but then you land the number 1 pick, Josh Rosen, for example, worst team. That was also in the same class. I could have brought that as an example. Worst team, terrible situation.
Right.
But they land the number 1 pick, and then Kyler Murray's on the board. And it's just like, sorry, man.
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden you're in
falling out of the league.
Exactly. So, if New England, they're going to have the lowest win total in terms of Vegas odds. If they land the number 1 pick, and you got Carson back there, Shedeur Sanders, Quinn Ewers, even.
Yeah, take your pick.
Notable guys, which I don't know how to feel about that class yet. Okay. However, there's not often you're the number 1 pick. And so I just don't know what they'll do, if it'll be another Justin Fields situation where you have the number 1 pick, not the fault of your own, and quarterback didn't get a great situation, but clock is ticking and we got to turn it around.
Yeah.
Let's reset
I think for me too is like the next class we've talked a little bit about, but like it would help you more to not have to go quarterback, right? So Jacoby Brissett being a bridge quarterback and allowing, I believe in the fact that you can learn from others' mistakes just as much as you can learn from your own. Watching film on guys where they're like, you get a certain read and you throw the ball in a bad place. Well, if he's throwing it and you see it, you should be able to fix it the same way he can, right? It should be, going together. It's not 100%. It's probably like 75% of that way. But if you're a good film watcher, if you're good at, getting yourself out there and making sure that you get that read correct, you don't have to experience the letdown of it going to an interception or an incompletion. It's really difficult for me to see a path for Drake Maye right now to be, in 3 years, what is his like ceiling, I guess? Because of course he's a really good football player. He's got a great arm. That's why he's a number 3 pick. And in a class where we had a bona fide number 1, like he's a number 3 pick, which could have gone number 1 in other classes. It's like, I don't know what the path is, though, for him to improve this team drastically until he's a third year, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, it's considered a success if 3 of the 6 first-round quarterbacks become a star/superstar. We have a pretty good feeling Caleb will be one of those 3, but then it's a crapshoot from there. It's situation-based, and 2021 as an example. You had Trevor Lawrence went to a terrible situation, but he was just far and away better than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody else was 1 year standout North Dakota State project. Justin Fields, Ohio State quarterback, never really pans out in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And so we ranked it as whoever goes to the 49ers is second. And then Patriots third at the time, but they botched their situation.
Yeah.
Based on coaching decisions, etc. And lo and behold, San Fran, they missed on the quarterback because they were impatient. But the situation, still, they went to multiple NFC championship games.
Mm-hmm.
Patriots went to the playoffs. Mac Jones was a Pro Bowler his rookie year, and he basically played well enough to where they cut Cam Newton before the season started. So, essentially, we were correct in that stance. We just didn't expect them to hire defensive coordinators as OCs.
Right.
And just destroying that development process. This is the same situation. Caleb Williams won Minnesota, and then after that, it's just, can Washington build a situation because they have the ability? New England can build the situation, but really all they did this offseason was just re-sign guys to high deals, and it's not like they put any on terrible contracts, but really their only significant add from a skill position is KJ Osborne. They drafted Jalen Polk in the second round, which was over other guys that we think would have been
it was a reach
more ideal. It was a reach. Yeah. So, and on top of that, they don't have a good track record of receivers being picked early. So it's nothing really adds up right now. So they need to express patience with Drake Maye. I just don't know if they will, because it's a situation of a franchise that has been spoiled over the last 20 years. And they're expecting, oh, we're back to the glory days. And you don't have that yet. As a Spurs fan, similar boat in the NBA, 20 years of dominance as a franchise. Then you have some lull years, 1 year of tanking, you get Victor. Well, you don't even have Victor yet. Right. Or you don't even have Brandon Miller.
Right.
So it's hard to just be like, oh, yeah, we're turning around and we're going to be most improved team, etc. It's going to be a patience game, and they need to instill that because it's new leadership now. Bill Belichick's out the door. So we'll just kind of see what happens.
Yeah, so jumping over, Spencer Rattler, quarterback, goes much later than probably expected. Drops all the way to, I believe, the 5th round. Goes to the Saints. The reason he is on this list is not necessarily the fit or anything like that. This has a little bit more to do with just his prior career to the NFL and what he did to hurt himself at this point. So I'll let you talk about this. I know you got it all.
This is one that I initially suggested and you were surprised by because you were like, I like the fit.
Yeah.
And there's potential that he could come out of it. Well, when you're a former number 1 overall pick, projected,
right,
and then 2 years later you're a 5th round pick, you're a loser. One, you don't have your 5th year option. You lost millions up front because of that. And then also 5th round pick, again, New Orleans, we see them taking a step back, and there's 3 quarterbacks. Who's to say that they wouldn't, if they had a top 5 pick next year, select one of those 3?
Right.
Why wouldn't they? Because they are in cap hell. They need to have a way to relieve that. And Spencer, just, there's no guarantee now. Now he has to be perfect. Whereas if he was a former 1st round pick, you can struggle a little bit, and it's like, we got a few more years, we'll figure it out, and we'll build around you. Whereas this is just like, if Derek Carr goes down for a month and he shows nothing, he's out the door, and then he's a journeyman backup. And that's a huge fall from just being, you were the number 1 pick in the draft. And so that's why we consider him a loser, because, and on top of that, even despite all, him falling and then transferring to South Carolina, doing okay, he was still a day 2 projected pick that somebody a playoff caliber team was going to take a chance on, like a Jalen Hurts range,
Hmm.
where you're raw. We'll just kind of see what happens, and then he goes to Philly with Carson Wentz, which everybody hated at the time because Carson Wentz you just re-signed
Hmm.
or extended, and Jalen Hurts unproven and second round pick doesn't make sense. That was what people were talking about for him, was going to a name your playoff team, Detroit.
Hmm. Go sit
That it's
behind
just
a
like,
player.
why you just drafted Hinder, blah blah blah. Well, that could have set him up for success, but now it's just like you have no, I guess, certain future at quarterback at that franchise, but it's not a team that's just on the way up.
Hmm.
It's actually a team that's on the way down.
Right.
So we'll see what happens, but there was just too much that went wrong throughout the last couple of years for him, and that's why I think he deserved to be on this list.
One thing that you did say is you said he's going to be a journeyman backup, and I don't think that he can be. Like we talk about Oklahoma in that situation when he became a backup, he kind of threw a fit,
Mm-hmm.
and we all
Yes.
saw his character issues that we all kind of thought were there. And I'll tell you what, the situation too is when you come from out of high school and everybody's talking about you, you have like a show about about yourself. Basically, it gives you this confidence and this edge that you like, this persona that you think you have. And when he became the backup to Caleb Williams, all that went away, and he did not know how to handle it.
Right.
And so now it's like, are you going to be able to be that backup?
And then again, I brought up Jalen Hurts earlier. Infamously, he was benched at halftime of the national championship game for a true freshman that basically had no real playing time.
Yep.
Imagine that, and then having the maturity to just be like, go support him.
Mm-hmm.
Just half a football, put on a smile, and then winning the championship as a backup, but leading the team all season, and now no one is congratulating you.
Right.
And then going to Oklahoma, winning a Heisman, doing great things, but that maturity is why Jalen Hurts was taking a chance on in the second round.
Yeah.
And now he's pretty much a top 5 quarterback. And whether or not he'll get better or if this is his ceiling and it's just he is what
Right.
he is now, doesn't matter. He has maturity. With Spencer, like you said, there was high school thing of a reality show and just not supporting teammates and, openly saying you suck. And, no one should judge somebody primarily based on how they were in high school. Like I was
Right, for
never
sure.
an a-hole, but I still don't want 17-year-old me being judged for my 27-year-old thoughts.
Right.
Same thing with Spencer. You should get the benefit of the doubt. But the more recent thing is when things didn't go your way, when he got benched, for Ward not playing well, it wasn't like it wasn't justified. And then just not being supportive of it. You're not going to be a backup that way. So that's
Right.
how you can immediately become out of favor in the NFL. And as a 5th round pick, there's no tie to you.
So my thing is too, like he was actually playing okay throughout the season that year. And when Caleb came in, it was because he was playing bad against Texas, and we need to win that game. The way Caleb played isn't why Spencer didn't go back to starting. It's because of how he reacted.
Yes.
Because he could have the next week, Lincoln Riley might have been like, hey, we know that everybody has an off game. This was yours, but you're going to go back and start because of how you reacted to the situation.
Mm-hmm.
But because of how he reacted that day, that's why he did not get an opportunity to go back in. Because then the coaching staff was like, hey, like we're not doing that. We're done with that. Thank you though. And he had to grow up a little bit. South Carolina, I think he probably grew up a little bit, but I don't know if it was enough to be justified as a Jalen Hurts, second round pick, basically. And I think that's probably the reason he fell to the fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, I think at this point he knows like, oh, I shouldn't be starting yet.
Mm-hmm.
But it's if and when Derek Carr goes down and he doesn't grasp that opportunity, and he's very Desmond Ritter-like,
Right.
which I keep on bringing him up like he's a terrible quarterback. He is a guy that can be a lifetime backup for a lot of teams. But Desmond Ritter had the situation to just maximize his opportunity, and it was an eyesore in terms of his performance.
Mm-hmm.
If Spencer has that, and then New Orleans is like, okay, we're moving on after this 4-game sample size. I don't think he's going to be like, okay, bring in Carson Beck and we're going to just grow this room together. It'll be fine. He's going to probably want out, and then somebody's going to take a chance on him, and that's also not going to work out. And then he's all of a sudden Josh Rosen, 25, out of the NFL.
Right.
So,
yeah. But yeah, that was our biggest losers from this NFL draft. And I think, when you look back at losers, like, of course, somebody might work out. We might have been wrong on one of these guys, but situationally, how it all played out is why they're on this list. Full teams, just not getting the guys that they need positionally. Some individual players getting screwed in the deal, basically. But yeah, we think that these guys are our biggest losers, and hopefully they outperform what we believe they can do.
Right. Yeah. And obviously, we love to assume that a lot of times we'll be right more often than not, but we don't want to just be like, haha, I was right about Spencer.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, that's how we just view it right now. And if it doesn't work out, like, good on you. Like, you did it. Good job. We want everybody to succeed. We want guys that are at the profession doing stuff that we could never do to thrive.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
we just have to react and predict how we anticipate it going, because we're pretty solid at doing that. So again, we appreciate y'all taking the time to sit down and talk with us. Please like, comment, subscribe. Check out our other reaction videos to the draft. We also have the winners video that we're doing as well, and then we're going to be coming out with more content, so please stay tuned for that.
Yeah, you'll get into the 2025 draft class, and we'll talk about, of course, now fantasy is going to be coming up soon. We'll do player rankings, we'll do power rankings for the NFL teams, all kinds of stuff, and then we start drafting. And we start doing our own drafts. We don't have to watch it on TV this time. So,
Yes, sir.
But yeah, y'all have a good one. We really appreciate it.